YouTube and stuff. Mm-hmm. There he is.
What's up, man? Are we live yet?
We are live. We're just giving some time to get some people on. And
awesome. That's cool. I'm gonna see if I can find a better place to put this thing where we have better lighting.
Yeah, no worries. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick.
Actually, Chad, that would be perfect. We can do that. I'm close enough to a plug. Well, I just gotta be close enough to a plug. Yeah. You guys caught me on the road. Goodness gracious. Of course, I've got the cord all wrapped up because I'm traveling. Did you tell them making you miss the No, not yet, but I'm definitely going to say something. That's for sure. Oh, man.
All right.
There we go.
Cheers, buddy.
Oh, man.
I don't have any Chinese beer, so the Mexicans are just going to have to do it.
The Mexicans are going to have it. Oh, man. See, I don't drink, but I just finished the 10 tournament, which is the top 10 anglers of the year for KBF last year. Got to fish head-to-head down here in Florida, and I just finished it, and Chad gives us a big bottle of top shelf scotch that has the 10 emblem. Oh, bourbon. Sorry, bourbon, Chad.
Bourbon.
Has the emblem etched in the bottle. It's a beautiful bottle, but I don't drink it all. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this bourbon? So it's sitting in my front seat of my truck. I'm going to make a barbecue sauce out of it because I've never drank it in my life.
With most of my whiskeys and bourbons and stuff like that is cook with it.
Yeah, that's part of what I end up doing anyway. So
I can't drink that stuff. That's like that's like gas from my ice dog.
Yeah, I've never had a drink, so I don't know. But I mean, it's one of those things. I was the best designated driver there ever was in the Army. Uh-oh, here comes
Nice.
Chad. Here we go. So I'm staying with Chad Hoover down here in Buell.
Hey, you guys know that you're making Gene miss the State of the Union of his favorite person right now to do this thing. He was so stoked all day long to watch Joe Biden talk about the State of the Union. Now he's got to do this instead. We'll record it for you.
Yeah, we'll see if we can compete with the State of the Union.
Oh man. No,
let's see. Oh, so can you see the comments and everything, Gene?
Yep.
All right, good. So
so I'm pretty familiar with it.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, I'll give some guys some chance to get on here. How you been, man?
I've been doing pretty good. I've been down in Florida for 3.5 weeks. My wife's ready for me to come home. I'm not ready to. I still got some work to do. So my goal is to be home by Saturday because that's my anniversary. But
that'd probably be a good idea.
Fishing tournaments and filming, and we're at Bienville Plantation, or it's called Bienville Outdoors now. Legendary bass fishing destination. They wrote about it in Bassmaster magazine years and years and years ago, 25 years ago. And so we got new ownership. So they brought us back on board to do some promotion for them. But we're kind of in the beginning stages of like the business talk and everything else, trying to figure out how all it's going to work. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Caught a 6.5 today and an 8, along with a bunch of little ones. So
carp?
Yeah, your green carp, as you guys call them.
Ditch pickles, green carp, grass carp, whatever you want to call them.
See, I love fishing for bass up where you are because nobody fishes for them, and they are fun. Goodness gracious. No,
You know,
Troy
I
said,
don't mind the brown ones. Those green ones, though, it feels like they're just everywhere and everybody can catch them. I mean,
yeah, that's the way it is up there. Come down here for a little while. You'll find out. So,
I feel like God made walleyes because, you know, they actually had a challenge because bass are too easy to catch.
yeah, you're in not
I
with.
made walleye because getting a hook out of a wet sock was too hard.
Yeah, getting a hook out of a wet sock was too hard. And that's what I always say. They're like reeling them in is like reeling in a wet sock.
You know, I tell that to people all the time. You know, what's crazy is in the summertime, that's what it's like. But you know, when you fish them, and I've learned a lot from you and some of my other bass buddies that you know taught me how to fish different types of plastics and rubbers and stuff like that. That most walleye guys, you know, now it's starting to see it. But I tell you what, when you fish walleyes like you do bass, those fish for some reason fight like mad.
Yeah, the ones I would catch them on like a chatterbait on Mille Lacs, and dude, they fought good.
Yeah.
Shallow, like on whopper ploppers.
Yep.
Whopper ploppers and all kinds of stuff. Mille Lacs is fun because you know they shut off being able to keep walleye for a long time. So
right.
There were 2 days in Mille Lacs a couple of years ago. I caught more walleye than I did smallmouth. So
when you fish them shallow and fish them in the weeds, those walleyes are aggressive as all can be, and man, they're mad. Those, you know, fishing structure, deep structure, and you know, trolling. Yeah, all you're doing there is just reeling in a wet sock.
Yep. Troy, are you from Michigan or Wisconsin? I never can remember.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir. Well, well, I think we're pretty good. We got some guys. They kind of pop in and out all through the evening. I know we'll be fighting a little bit of guys, but I think most of the guys that are going to come in tonight could care two squats about that guy talking on TV. The best meme I seen today was Joe Biden holding his ice cream cone and something on the lines of, you know, we already had the clowns. They just had to send in the balloons.
Don't get me started with that mess. Oh my goodness.
Oh, we could all sit and talk about that.
You know, I'm always respectful when I talk politics with anybody because I enjoy everybody's opinion. But goodness gracious, we're in a big cluster mess right now. So
yeah, you don't have to hide from anything on my page. That's for sure. I don't bring politics into any of my social media stuff hardly ever. Every once in a while I will. But I'm pretty certain everybody knows how I stand.
Yeah, well, you know, one of my tricks on Facebook is every time I need to filter out some friends, you know, one year I'll post a left-leaning post and I'll get rid of a bunch of them, and the other year I'll post a right-leaning post and it'll get rid of a bunch of them. So, you know, it's one of the ways that it's the fastest way to refresh your friends list so you can bring on some more people that I've ever seen. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it. You were talking with Jensen, the Mr. Fluekmaster. If you've never gone and seen any of his YouTube stuff, you know, go check it out. The guy is a master at teaching. You know, his slogan is teaching the world to fish. I had the pleasure of meeting him and becoming friends with him here. Oh boy, it goes back how many years, Gene? Down at ICAST, I met you. You know, with all our
8 years, 7 or 8 years.
All our friends at 13 Fishing, you know, and the cool thing about the fishing industry, right, is, you know, we go down, there's a couple events that happen, you know, throughout the year. St. Paul Ice Show, ICAST, and, you know, and then a couple of the bigger shows in the Midwest. And, you know, for us, it's more of a family reunion type of a thing to go to these events. Sure, we get to hang out with the crowds and talk fishing with a bunch of people, but really it's all, you know, the different pro staff guys and friends that you meet in the industry that are scattered throughout the country that congregate to one spot. And, you know, we get a chance to catch up, talk family, talk, you know, shop, and just it's a lot of fun. And I got a chance to fish with you. You came up here and fished some tournaments. Was it with the Guggen Squad guys or something?
Yeah, that was before they were, but yeah.
Yep. You know, you came up here and we got to go share some time on the water and fishing.
Remember that we were catching spawning bluegill in 26 feet of water.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. But that's those deep, clear lakes, man. That's goes to show that those fish don't always go up shallow.
Yep.
But Gene's, you're from what is there a Georgia? Am I guessing?
Yes, this is not a Green Bay Packers hat.
I was gonna try and figure out how to say something because yeah, he's a Georgia boy, and Fluke, how'd you get into fishing? I mean, what got you here?
Oh my goodness. It's so cool that if I look back at all the little stair steps that got me to where YouTube was a thing, it's pretty cool. It's a long, long story, but my dad was a guide on the Snake River back in the 50s when it was wild, when it was literally, you wouldn't see people for days. And so he was a trout fisherman. He got me into fishing early in life. And then we moved up to, I became 16, started fishing local ponds around, found out what bass were. Then my best friend at 17, 18 was a bass fisherman, and he got me all into it. And then I joined the Army and got away from bass fishing. And then I got married to a wonderful woman who's my father-in-law is a big bass fisherman. And so he got me back into it. And then it's just like stair steps. I wanted to learn how to bass fish, so I got online. The internet was new, so we had the bass fishing forums. And I got on the bass fishing forums, and I learned how to bass fish through the forums. And I became staff on the forums, and one thing led to another, and I became good at bass fishing and pretty good at finding them and catching them. And I got to go fishing with a guy named Bob Lusk, who was a biologist for a place called the Kingfisher Society, who then hired me on as a guide, and it just stair stepped. And everything that kind of happened I really feel like it was supposed to happen. And through all this time, I was just watching people and watching the internet grow and watching people like Steve Parks, who owns Ragetail. I watched him grow huge followings through forums just by being engaging and just by teaching people and talking to people and everybody. I mean, these huge cult-like followings that if somebody said anything bad about Ragetail, it was like the Army was called in, and they're just really, really, loyal. And I was like, man, he's on to something. And then YouTube started, and really, to be honest with you, I was a scoutmaster, and I had 6 or 7 boys that were inner city boys that wanted to learn how to fish. And I had taken them on one fishing trip. And my problem was I couldn't fish on the weekends because I worked weekend nights at the local hospital. And I told them, I said, you know what, there's this new channel, new thing called YouTube that'll let me put videos on there for free. Because every other site at the time, they wanted $20 to $50 a month to host videos, or $20 a video to host videos, and YouTube let me do it for free. So I sold a bunch of fishing tackle, bought my first camera, learned how to edit, and I started making videos for these kids so they could watch them and learn how to fish when I wasn't there. And so I come to find out there was a lot of people that wanted to watch YouTube and wanted to learn how to fish on YouTube. And like I said, it was the beginning of YouTube. It was a year and a half to 2 years into it. The application for the partner program was like a job application. You filled it out. They called you. You had an interview. They looked at your channel. They made sure it was kosher. And then they allowed you to monetize it. And so, it took me 4 years to make my first $100. If it makes sense. So, but it was fun. It's a good little trip. But I mean, I'd never thought I'd get over 100,000 subscribers. I was the first fishing YouTuber to ever get 100,000 subscribers. I never thought that I would get as many as I am right now. And I really don't pay much attention to the subscribers anyway, unless I'm on a podcast and they tell me how much I have. But yeah, it's just fun. It's fun to see people enjoy what I've done, enjoy the work that I've put into it.
That's probably one of the greatest things of what we do is educating. I mean, I love the days to go out that, being a guide, we get guys that they just want to come out and catch fish. But then you get the guys that want to come out, they could care less about fishing and they just want to learn. And those are my favorite days. You tend to work a little bit harder, but in the end, it pays off. And then what I really get a kick out of is I always tell people is I'm going to give you as much knowledge as you can possibly retain in a day. And I want you to be able to come out the next time and do this all by yourself. I'll be there to coach you, send me messages, I'll help you along the way. But I want to make sure that people understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and, educate them so they can go back out and, share it with their kids or, friends or whatnot. The only thing I'm not going to do is give spots away.
Yep. It's I fell in love with it. I was guiding at the Kingfisher Society. Now the Kingfisher Society is a private 250-acre lake. They don't do it anymore, but it was a high class 5-star resort. And I was basically a fishing caddy. I sat in the cockpit of the boat. There was a guy on the front, probably a guy in the back, and I drove the remote control that drove the trolling motor around this lake. And I took fish off of hooks and put new soft plastic worms on there, and that was it, But I had one client, and he was probably in his 80s, if I had to guess. He's sitting right here in the back of the boat behind me, and never said hardly anything all day. I had to teach him how to use a spinning reel, and how to cast and everything else. And he'd make a cast, and I'd watch him fumble with the reel, trying to switch it over to, get it into his strong hand. And then the whole time I'm watching the line swim off to the right. And this happened multiple times during the day. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to get another gut hook fish, and these fish weren't, the company had spent like $500. If you put it all together, $500 a fish. If you put together how much money they spent to grow these fish. But anyway, I watched him swim off, and I was like, and he just all day just catching fish and having a good time. Well, at the end of the day, he got off the boat. He looked at me and shook my hand. He said, and this is a man who's been in business his entire life and worked hard and earned the millions and millions of dollars he was worth. And he looked at me, he said, I just had one of the best days of my life. And I said, really? Because I never could connect with him. I can usually connect with just about anybody, but I never could connect with him. And then I realized that there's something special about the water and the ability that I have to be able to help other people have a good day and fish and catch fish and be able to enjoy the things that I've basically taken for granted my whole life. But to be able to do that at that one person scale is awesome, but to be able to do it on YouTube to the thousands and thousands of people is even better. And I fell in love with it then. But that man changed my view on a lot of things just by just saying he had the best day of his life.
Yeah. So. And that's funny is I get a lot of people from different, ethnicity groups, places around the world. I mean, I've had people from all over the world, and I'm sure you've fished with them too. And the one thing that when you're in a boat and you got no place to go, you get the chance to tell stories and get into people's family lives. And some of the best days I've ever had on the water that are probably stick out the most, memorable days are, fishing with different pastors and different guys and, and talking about life and God. And I couldn't tell you how many days we've been out. I mean, we've caught tons of fish over the 23 years I've been doing this. And I can't remember a lot of the good trips, but I can remember the days, whether we caught fish or not. I can remember the people that stood out the most and have touched me and, really kind of changed my outlook on life too. And that's why we do it. I mean, it isn't about making money. It isn't about, catching fish. It's about, enjoying the company, the camaraderie, the small world that this fishing community really is. And, it's, like yourself, meeting a guy like yourself, and here you are, 20 states away, and, we're here sitting here talking fishing.
Yeah, it was 74 degrees today.
Hey, it's not much different up here. It's like 40, almost 50 degrees up here.
You guys had a little warm up, that's for sure.
Wow, we're just struggling here to keep ice. We shouldn't be having this kind of weather. We had thunderstorms and lightning last night in the middle of, here it is, beginning of February.
You were on that trip to Lake of the Woods, weren't you? The media event we have for 13.
Yeah,
I remember it was like right at 32 to 35 degrees every day, and slushy, and we had ice lodges and all. It was. I'll never forget the ride back home. We went that last day. We took snowmobiles up into Canada and fished up in Canada. And on the way home, the dude I was with had that TV show, and I never can remember his name.
Mike Olson.
Yeah, Mike Olson was driving, and I was holding on to him for dear life. And we hit a big patch of slush, and he just looked back at me, said, "Hold on," and he gunned that son of a gun, and we went straight across. I said, so when we got done, I said, "What would have happened had you stopped?" He said, "We would have sunk." I said, "Oh, okay. I'm glad you were driving and not me."
That was probably one of the most memorable trips I think I've ever had.
Yeah,
the laughs we shared. Those guys getting pulled over by the Canadian bounties, and when we came back to camp, and Jose and everybody was all like doom and gloom, and that was something else. Dave was a hoot, man. Him sitting there talking back to the bounty guy or the Canadian.
Lefebvre has no filter. We had so much fun. That was a blast.
They're trying to arrest guys, and he's telling the game warden, he's like, "Move over. I can't see my locator."
I got to catch a fish. Yeah, I was in Canada that day, so I missed that day.
Yeah, we were all up in Canada.
Yeah, you guys were just barely in Canada. Oh yeah, you were with us. We went.
I was with you guys. Yeah, I had the sleds. We went all the way up. Oh yeah, that was a trip, man.
Those Mounties are no joke, man. They are. I mean, the Canadian authorities. We had that one guy walk right into our spread. Didn't announce himself or anything else. Just walked in and started checking stuff.
Yep.
And of course, with my best Southern accent, when he came and checked me, I was like, "You realize that had you been doing something like that down in the South where I'm from, we'd have been fighting first, and then would have had a chance to pull your badge out."
Right.
I was like, that was not down where I'm from. We don't put up with. We don't stand for that. That's for sure.
Another funny, as long as we're talking about that, because we got to tell this story. So one of the engineers from 13 Fishing, Frank, is from overseas, and he's in one of the shacks that stayed down on the Minnesota side. So they thought. Actually, were we at Sportsman's Lodge? So the Sportsman's Lodge guides they've already been yelled at a bunch of times to keep their shacks on the U.S. side, and they actually had them on the Canadian side of the border. So this Canadian guy and this U.S. guy go in, and they're interrogating the hell out of all the guys in the shacks, and Frank and who was Reed was up by us. Who was in the shack? The other third, I can't escape in my mind here. Who's the other dude with 13?
There were so many people there. I can't remember. There was Reed.
The guy. They just had their kid. Jess's husband. Can't I think of his name?
Ask. Freaking, he makes the rods, and I'm my mind.
Yeah, he makes all the
blank. Holy cow! I just talked to him 2 weeks ago. Anyway, yeah.
So okay, and I can't think. Why am I completely drawing a blank? Anyway, so this Asian guy speaks perfect English.
So Frank is Chinese. So everybody knows
So Frank is Chinese, and he speaks perfect English. And then, so the other guy from 13 Fishing is, white guy, American, and this Canadian or this Mountie guy comes into the shack, and he's looking for licenses for everybody, and he goes and he turns to Frank, and he's like, "Hey, do you fish here much, or do you have your license?" And Frank just kind of looked back and whatever, and the guy from 13 Fishing, just goes to Frank. He's like, "Hey, Frank, do you fish here much?" Frank's like, "No, this is my first time." So he pretended that he didn't speak English. And the Canadian dude was just like, "Oh my God, I'm going to kill all these people." That was, we sat back and watched that on, Dave had his GoPro up in the shack, and he was recording all this stuff. When we got back to that hotel room and was watching all that, oh my God, I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Trip was nuts. I mean, the flight from Bemidji to Minneapolis, Dave had everybody around him thinking the plane was going to crash. And there's this black guy that was sitting in front of him with a pair of sound canceling earphones on at the beginning of the flight. And I leaned over to him. I said, "You realize you are the luckiest person on this plane. You get to put those things on and not listen to the dude behind you."
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh man, it was a blast. It really was.
That's, it's going to bug me now. Ricky. Yeah, Ricky Teschendorf. So yeah, him and Ricky Ricky goes to Frank. Frank, do you fish here much? Or he asked if the Canadian guy asked
if he
spoke English. Yep. And then Ricky goes to him, "Frank, do you fish here much?"
Oh
man. So what else you got going on there, Gene?
Well, I got several things. I'm actually going to start guiding again, but not full time, like 2-3 days a month, maybe, maybe 4. And then I'm going to do a few more things, but my whole guide site's going to be it's on the website called Fishing Chaos. It's something you might want to look into if you probably already have all yours set up anyway, so you ain't got to worry about it. But Fishing Chaos is what we use in KBF and kayak bass fishing to be able to enter our fish and everything else. Well, they have another side of their website and an app called Charter, and you can go in there and find my charter page, and that's where you can book our book trips with me. And it's pretty cool. Real simple for me. It manages all of that. Simple for me to use and put in and that kind of stuff. And then real simple for them to use. And then they pay and they use the same banking type system or money system as Uber and everybody else uses. So you pay through Fishing Chaos and then so on and so forth. So it works pretty good. I'm just getting it started. Haven't launched it yet. Everything's set. But the goal is it's going to be all kayak guiding. It's going to be along the Tennessee River, Gunnersville area, Wilson, Wheeler, that kind of area. And a lot of that's still up in the air. But the cool thing is if you're fishing out of a boat like you do, you got to have a captain's license on the Tennessee River. Well, captain's license only covers the operator of the vessel. And so as a kayak guide, I'm not operating their vessel. They are. So through that, it's not really a loophole, but through that deal, I don't have to have a captain's license to guide on the Tennessee River unless somebody gets a wild hair and makes it a new law. But, it's one of those things where, we can get away with it. And as well as I do, having a captain's license is a great and wonderful thing if you're on saltwater running big boats and everything else. But in freshwater, it hardly covers a thing, but you still got to have it.
Yep. Well, and we have to have it up here too. Great Lakes, Winnebago system, Wolf River system.
But in any navigable water, you kind of had you're better off having it than not. Yeah, but with a kayak, you don't have to because you're not operating their vessel.
We're not operating their boat there.
Yep.
Sure.
So, but that's not the reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it just because I want to do it. And when I did it, it was a whole lot of fun. What I used to do is I would travel to other people's lakes and take them fishing on their lakes and show them how I found fish on their lakes, and then get them ready for the next 3 months of fishing on their lake, which was a whole lot of fun when I could do it. Now, my wife doesn't like me traveling so much, but this month is I talked to her about an hour ago. She's like, "I'm ready for you to come home." I'm like, "Yeah, give me a few minutes." So,
that's the hardest thing we do as fishermen is just being away from the family, man. It's
I'll be home for a week, and then I'm going to the Indianapolis show, the Indy show. I'll be there, and that's a 2-week show. And so, and I'm doing seminars most of the time. There's a couple of days I'm not, but yeah, it's going to be
2-week show. What is that for?
What's it called, Chad? The Indianapolis
Sports Boat Travel and RV
Sports Boat Travel and RV Show, and it's 2 weekends, but it's like 4 days during the weekend. So with a Tuesday and Wednesday as a break.
Okay.
Or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as a break, and then it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's just nuts. So
that's crazy. That's too much.
I'll tell you when I'm done with it's too much, but I think it is too. But it's yeah. Jensen. They used to not take a break, and it would just be they'd go run through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Of course, nobody would show up probably, but it's trade show season. You know how it is.
Yeah, trust me. We start, being in the sales side of thing too. We start distributor shows back in September, and we run pretty much all of September through October, and then we start consumer shows in November. And we have a week off there. Thanksgiving and deer hunting that third week in November. And then pretty much the first 3 weeks then in December, we're at consumer shows or retail shows.
How do those do in December? Are they usually pretty good?
So the largest ice fishing show in the world is in St. Paul, Minnesota, that first weekend in December every single year. And that is kind of the holy grail for ice fishermen.
Okay. See, our deer season gets in the way of any kind of shows. So here in the South, if you have a show from second week of September through 15th of January, you're not going to get a whole lot of people because everybody's deer hunting.
Yep.
So so our main shows are late January then through February and March.
And that's kind of where our spring stuff starts now. Through, let's see, next week or the week after are like spring fishing boat shows. And the All Canada show was here just last weekend, where all the Canadian resorts come down and set up their booths to book stuff for this upcoming summer. And and then it just goes all the way through end of March and early April, where you get into turkey shows and deer, the deer turkey expos. And it's just everybody's showed out. And I don't know about you guys, but the trend that we're seeing is, number one, people aren't coming to the shows anymore. I think COVID really taught the consumer that they don't have to go to the shows to get the information anymore, because you can get it right here. We're doing, your guys like you, myself, all these fishing guys have done a very good job on teaching people how to do and how to use products and product reviews. I mean, hell, even when you go into a store now, you're looking at to buy something. The first thing you do is you pull this thing out and you're looking at reviews, or can I get it cheaper anyplace else? So we've done a really good job of educating the consumer to the point where they're not coming to the shows anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really gone downhill. And it, I personally, I wouldn't mind seeing shows go away.
Just so we don't have to travel so much. It's fun for us, those of us who are trying to get sponsorships and stuff like that. They're great because then you can go be seen. You can go and volunteer to work for booze and do the hard work that you need to do before you even start looking for sponsorships or anything else. And, they're great for that. And then they're great to meet people and stuff like that. But yeah, if you, as many as you guys have up north, I can see why you could get so burned out with them. We don't have that many down here. We have the good ones are like the East Tennessee Sports Show, which was just this last weekend or weekend before last. There's one in Richmond, Virginia, that's really good. And then there's only a couple, 2, 3 other ones that are worth going to, really, in the Southeast.
Sure.
So, because we're doing stuff. You guys are stuck in your house, frozen in, or going ice fishing. You got to get out and do something, I guess. But besides drink.
Well, Wisconsin, they like to drink. They even drink at the shows.
Oh, I was comparing. When I drive through that area, I'm like, yeah, they have as many liquor stores and bars as we have churches down here. It's like a church on every corner down here. Down there, they're up there. It's a bar or liquor store.
So, it's funny. You go in my town, I think there's maybe 1,100 people in my little town here. And when you drive down Main Street, you pull into town, you've got a diner, a church, a gas station, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars, then another diner, another gas station, and then let's see, 1 bar, 2, and then 2 more bars. So that's our town of 1,100. They get you coming in, they get you going out.
Here in the South, it would be just the opposite. It'd be a bar or a liquor store, and then a church, and then maybe a church in a trailer, and that, it's just oh, it's funny. I just love comparing that kind of stuff. I love it up there, though. Summertime, if I could have a house up in Minnesota or Wisconsin or anywhere up in there, I'd be up there every summer. August, June, July, August, September, I'd be up there, and then in middle of September, come back home. It'd be a blast.
So Rob had a question. Rob Learman, which is your favorite show? The Public, Old Friends, and Best Deals? So I guess, the favorite show, and it's really kind of tamed down compared to what it used to be, is ICAST, because you meet, if there's anybody that is anybody in the industry, you're there. You're down at ICAST. And, the St. Paul Ice Show is more, Midwest guys. It's not, I don't get a chance to see Gene or Dave or, some of the manufacturers, I guess, that play or that dabble in the ice fishing might bring some of their factory guys up. But for the most part, you don't see a whole lot of the guys. ICAST is definitely the place to go. Now, with ICAST, that's not a public show. That's only open to people in the industry, manufacturers, reps, pro staff, stuff like that. So it's not any place you can go and get good deals, or you're not buying anything there.
No,
it's
nothing's for sale.
What that show is all the manufacturers from all over the world come together. They're showing off all their new products for the next season. And then the buyers from, the majority of the major sporting goods stores, distributors, buy groups and whatnot, come in and do business with the manufacturers' reps, with the manufacturers that, just buying direct and setting up meetings and stuff like that. So it's more of a business meet or a business show than it is, a consumer retail show that you would, typically go to and see, where you can go and buy stuff. And, they've got clearance tables with bins and racks of, giveaway stuff, completely different deal. So, if that answers your question, I guess that's kind of the best way to put it.
For friends, it's always ICAST, because it's just like you said, it's like a family reunion. I just go down I spend the first day and a half of ICAST just going around saying hi to everybody that I've met over the years and built good relationships with. One thing you got to realize about the fishing industry, it's really, really small, and everybody knows everybody. And so you really got to kind of try to keep your integrity in check, and everything else. Just don't burn any bridges in the fishing world. My favorite trade show, man, the East Tennessee show is the best one that I go to, because it's got it's got a lot of local that paint crankbaits and stuff like that. So you can find some really good handmade crankbaits there, and swim baits and that kind of stuff, and some homemade stuff. A lot of stuff. The lure retriever I bought there is called the Tipton's Golden Retriever. It's made by some old man in his garage. And it's the best lure retriever I've ever used. It gets Alabama rigs out of trees. It breaks fishing line that you get your crankbaits caught in. And it's just a great, and it only cost me $25. And
what's the name of that?
Well, the Tipton's Golden Retriever.
Tipton?
Tiptons. I think the only website that you can buy it on, as far as I know, you probably have more now, but it's called Land Big Fish, is what used to be the only place that carried it. But it's some old man in his garage, and it's just a round lead cylinder with one of the normal little corkscrew things on there, but at the end has a big heavy duty hook, and that hook grabs the fishing line and breaks it when you get your crankbaits caught in it and that kind of stuff. I've brought a fish attractor up off the bottom to unhook my chatterbait on one time. It was like a 250-pound fish attractor. Almost flipped my kayak doing it. But yeah, dude, but I bought a bunch of stuff at that show. It's just a really, really good show. And it's one of the few in the South that are, that get a lot of people to it.
So what about, the Classic? The Classic always has a huge fishing show attached to it. How does that compare to something like that Tennessee show?
The Classic is actually probably a little bit bigger just because it goes along with the tournament and everything else. So people come there, they come to the show, but for me, I don't know. It's just the Classic is a little over commercialized. In other words, you have certain people that have contracts. They're advertisers with Bassmaster, so they're allowed to have a booth and all this other stuff. There's so many holes and hoops that they've got to jump through to be able to get into the Classic Expo. So, but those local ones, you can find little Joe that these teenage like last year before last, there were some teenage kids that were custom painting crankbaits in their garage. And I bought like 15 crankbaits from them, it's just, and they had a table, that's kind of the ones I really love. So.
All right. So for the guys that tune in weekly, and Rob already beat me to the punch, and I know Ray is probably still watching, and he wants to be entertained. Let's talk about, you're a bass guy. I'm a walleye guy. Mm-hmm. The walleye guys spend boatloads of money on custom painted baits. The bass guys spend boatloads of money on custom painted baits.
Yep.
Why? These fish, and I've done it 100 times. Yep. You've got a crankbait that is painted with all kinds of fancy scale patterns and color, and it's going through the water at 2.5 miles an hour. Number one, the walleyes are typically down here.
Yep.
Eyes are on top of their head. They see the bottom of the belly, and they've got a split second to figure out, okay, am I going to eat that bait or not? They don't come up, get over the top of it, look down. Oh, look at those pretty fancy colors on, the scale patterns, and then back up and look at the side profile. Oh, look at the eye detail. That's awesome. Okay, I think I'm going to eat it. No, they don't do that. These custom painting guys are a complete joke to me in some points. I totally get a good custom painted bait has good colors that are bold and have that high contrast to match kind of a pattern that you're looking for. I got no problem with that. But the guys that are spending 3 hours painting a crankbait with scales and, just everything you can imagine to make these things look pretty, they're catching the fishermen, but it's not going to catch the fish anymore.
100%. 100%. I buy them because I love to support these local. I'll budget $150 so much to go and buy them. I might throw them, I might not, but I'm one of those guys that I carry. I carry enough stuff to be able to paint the belly of a crankbait either orange or orange. You get the crankbait, you either want it to be white or you want it to be orange. And I've seen that millions of times make a difference, whether that belly of that crankbait had an orange on it or not.
Absolutely.
But for me, I'm very simple with colors, let's go to plastics are the easiest. I'm a green pumpkin, black and blue, June bug down in Florida. Down here in Florida, I'm throwing June bug or watermelon, and then if I want to imitate a shad, it's either white and chartreuse or white and chartreuse. It's pretty simple. When I'm like today, I was catching my bass on a chatterbait, but I was fishing the chatterbait like a jig. I was hopping it up off the bottom and letting it fall back down, just little flutters and fall back down. And I caught, like I said, I caught a 6, I caught an 8, caught a bunch of 3s and 4s, just because they were the fish were in a funk. But I was, the only thing that was important to me is that I had a gold flash on it. So the blade had to be gold, and be down here in Florida with golden shiners. That's kind of a must, but you just got to keep it simple is the biggest thing. That's what I try to show in my videos is that, you can go crazy with buying all kinds of stuff. But if you just keep it simple in your tackle box and in your head, you can be a whole lot more successful catching any kind of fish if you just keep it simple, you know?
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, everybody thinks that these fish have, crazy good eyesight, and that they see all these different colors, and fish don't see colors like what we see colors. We keep talking about this over and over again, and I'm not here to take business away, but be smart as an angler. To go out and spend $25 on a custom painted crankbait versus standard same bait that is factory colored for $6. To me that's a lot of wasted money when you can take a little bit of orange paint. Like you said, I use pretty much the same thing. All my crankbaits either going to have a white belly or an orange belly.
Now, the only exception that I've found to that is swim baits. The big swim baits, because a big bass will tail a swim bait for a long period of time. You get those old smart bluegill that'll sit there and look at your bait, and just study it and look at it and look at it, and then all of a sudden they just suck it in. Well, a big bass with a big swim bait is pretty much the same way. So with big swim baits, the more realistic the paint job, because they get a really good look at them, especially in that clear water around hydrilla and that kind of stuff. You really want them to be as realistic looking as you can if you're going to fish them super slow. Now, you go talk to my buddy Mike Buca, who makes the Buca bull shad. He makes the bull shad swim bait. His paint jobs are the ugliest things on the planet. But they're designed to fish fairly quick, fairly fast. But if you want to fish them slow, I always recommend get some of the custom painted ones that are a little bit better. But I always have, with his, I have a better luck reeling them and working them a little bit faster, so that it's more like a crankbait. They're just swimming, and the fish don't have a chance to get a good look at them.
Bro, I just fish them all ugly because I think the fish kill them to put them out of their misery.
Chad says he thinks the fish just kill them to put out of their misery because they're so ugly. But yeah, I mean, it just all depends. But that's one thing where I have seen the difference was the swim bait, because they really do, they tail them. They get right behind them and they'll follow them. I've watched 10-pound bass follow my swim bait all the way back to the boat. It ain't fun.
So, I mean, and I'm not a bass guy by all means. I don't know much about.
You proved that several years ago when we were fishing. So
yep. But walleyes, I like walleyes. The muskies. We use a lot of stuff that has a real lifelike profile. But I don't think the colors make the difference that like what people think. I mean, I like something that has a very good contrast. It's like ice fishing. A lot of guys use like a Wonder Bread, a white with specks all over the place. So that way there, when that bait's moving, you're getting a bunch of different contrasting colors. Same with a crankbait. That's kind of what I like to do. And, granted, like I say, the muskies can be pretty peculiar on what they choose to eat.
Yeah.
Basically off of a profile, and probably more like a bass, bigger game fish, like those big largemouth. I've never encountered them. So I have no idea. The biggest bass, Gene, I've ever caught, and I didn't even catch it. I had a client catch it. It was 11 years ago. I just came up on a memory on my phone. I had a guy catch an 8-pounder on a tip-up here in Wisconsin. It was when we pulled it up out of the hole, I didn't know what that thing was. I mean, you got an 8-inch hole, and the mouth on this fish could have swallowed that hole. We pulled them out, and the guy weighed probably, he was a good probably 450-ish, and he's a big boy. I want to say the bass was just under 28 inches. It was an old big fish.
Big fish. Wow.
I mean, you couldn't. It was an unbelievable fish. One I'll probably never ever see again. In a cold, deep, clear lake like that. I could only imagine how old that fish really was.
Yeah, no kidding.
That was an enormous fish, and he got him mounted, and it was awesome.
You'd have been proud of me today. I was live scoping some suspended crappie on this lake we were fishing, and I caught like 4 over 14 inches on a jerkbait of all things. I was throwing a full size 3 treble hook jerk bait for these
And
crappie
catching crappies.
and catching giants. I mean, they were all big. It was a lot of fun. I was like, I kept seeing them, and I knew they weren't bass because of how they were stacked and everything else. I said, let me see if I went and dug a jerk bait out of the back of my boat, threw it out there, and watched them come after it. And man, I don't know how many I caught, but tomorrow I'm going to have a cooler in my kayak. Some of them are coming home with me.
Nice. So let me ask you this. This kind of is a really hot topic up in the north here with the musky guys. Forward-facing sonar. What's your opinion on this? What are you using? And are the kayak guys really into it? For most people that don't know, Gene's a really big kayak fisherman. That's he runs. You still got your Alumacraft too, right?
Yeah, it's in the yard. I use it for high school tournaments now.
Okay. So Gene's a really, really big kayak guy, fishes all the kayak bass fishing tournaments and travels around and does a lot of stuff in the little paddle boats. What are you guys using forward facing sonars?
Yes. In tournaments, most of us are the ones of us that can have it on our, can afford to put it on our kayaks. We have them on there. I'm using Garmin right now, but I bought those units, but I just signed a contract with Lowrance because Brunswick acquired Lowrance year before last, and I'm already with Brunswick, so it was just one of those things. It was just going to naturally eventually get there. I just had to wait for them to get their ducks in a row and figure out what they were going to do. So when I get home, I've got to put all new Lowrances on my kayaks. But forward facing sonar, it very few things you can call a game changer. For the last 10 years, it's been propulsion, trolling motors and electronics are the only thing that has changed the way we fish. Everything else is pretty much going to be the same. But I really think that it is. It can make for a really, really fun day of fishing, but if you use it too much, it can ruin you. If that makes sense, you can get to the point where you forget how to find them without it. You forget how to fish without it. And so for me, I'll fish with it for a tournament and I'll go home and leave it in the truck and I'll just fish. And I want to get back to the point where I know how to find fish without using it or how to catch fish without using it. Where it's an advantage, you catch more fish on fewer casts is what I love about it. I can see the fish and I can cast to it and catch them. The one thing I remember the most is when I first got my live scope, my Garmin's, I went over and I looked off. I was on a drop, and at the bottom of the drop, I saw a good size return. I was like, that has got to be a bass. In the lake I was at, there's no doubt it was a bass. So I grabbed a jig, and it was out 25 feet. I flipped the jig out 25 feet, watched the jig fall down to the bottom, and it passed that fish 3 feet off the bottom. And I watched the fish turn down and go down and look at that jig. And she just sat there and just looked at the jig. And I held it there. And I normally, if I hadn't seen her do it, I would not have held the jig there, but I left it there. And all I did was I went twitch and I just popped my line just a little bit to make that skirt thump. And I watched her go down. And I didn't even feel the bite. I just set the hook, and it was an 8.5 pounder. And that was when I was like, man, this can really be dangerous on the water. But a live scope in tournaments, it's like, remember when side scans came out and everybody's like, it's the worst thing in the world or it's the best thing in the world. The Bassmasters Classic, it was on Lake Hartwell. It was on Hartwell? Yeah, it was on Lake Hartwell, was the first classic after they came out with live scope. It didn't matter if the pro was sponsored by Humminbird or by Lowrance or by anybody else. They had a Humminbird side scan in the bottom of their boat during that tournament, where it couldn't be seen by pictures or anything else. They had them mounted up underneath their console. Everybody had live scope, because if you weren't using it, you were getting beat by it. And that's kind of what I see forward facing sonar. But I would recommend for those of us who just fun fish and want to use it. It's great for crappie. It's great for bass. It's great for just about anything. But leave it at home every once in a while, or you're going to really do yourself a disservice by getting totally dependent on it. That's for sure.
Yep. So here's how I use it, and I'm going to answer a couple of these questions here. Fisher, my boy, he's actually here tonight too. He's like, when are you going to come up and fish in the boat with us? That or take the kayaks out. And then let's see, Matt, how do you know what type of reel to use with what lure, like or what to use with a bait caster and what to use with a spinning reel? I guess
that's simple. I can pretty much, it's pretty simple. Light lures, finesse techniques, spinning rods. Okay. Anytime where a spinning rod's a far better fighting rod than a bait caster, because your guides are on the bottom and it's just, there's a whole bunch of different little physics that go along with it. But if you're using light line and you have a chance of catching a big fish, you want to have it on a spinning rod. Now with a bait caster, with what reel to use, it's pretty simple. Things with a lot of drag, like deep diving crankbaits and Alabama rigs and things like that, you want to use a 6-speed reel, 6-3-1. I don't care what the second number is, but a 6-speed reel. For moving baits, chatterbaits, things like that, where you don't really want to burn them, you don't want to fish them too fast, a 7-speed reel. And then an 8-speed reel is anything that you need to get back to you fast to make another cast, or anything that the fish tends to pick up and go straight at you with, like a jig. 12-speed reel for everything. Anything else you want a high speed 8 or 8+. But anyway, that's the simple thing. Don't try to match exact baits to exact reels. You'll drive yourself nuts. That's for sure.
Yep. So. And then what type of boat are you running right now, Gene, your kayak?
I'm running a Bonafide SS127. I've got an XI3 55-pound thrust trolling motor on the front, which is their kayak version. It's got a 36-inch shaft. And then and I run Dakota lithium batteries. I've got a 135 amp hour battery that I run on that, and it runs me about 20. If I was to go full speed, I could get almost 20 miles out of it. So it's good for at least a day and a half of hard fishing. And so, but yeah, top speed of it's like 4 miles an hour. And, okay. And yeah, it's a fun thing to fish at, especially like today. I caught that 8-pounder, and these Florida bass fight. I mean, they fight hard and long. And I think I flipped the trolling motor off, had it on spot lock, and I flipped off the spot lock and let it drag me around until I got tired enough for me to put it in the net. So
nice. Before we get to Joseph's question here, what is your favorite bass bait?
I don't have one. I make it a point not to have one, because then I get pigeonholed. And so I let the bass tell me what they want. Like today, they didn't quite want a chatterbait, slow reeled. I caught a few of them on the bottom, but I found out that they wanted it just drug on the bottom and then popped up and dropped. Now I was only popping it about 6 inches off the bottom, and I was working it down drops and doing that. And then when they stopped hitting that, I just grabbed a jig and I threw that out and did the same thing and caught another one. And I just kept switching up whenever the bite slowed down. So if you end up having a favorite like a fluke, it only works for certain periods of time. So if I'm going to throw my favorite bait all the time, then I'm not going to catch them all the time. So that's the biggest thing. I just try not to have favorites.
So, okay, for a walleye guy, right? We get asked, I get to ask this question all the time too. If you had one bait to use, only one bait, what would it be? For me, it would always be a jig, because you can fish a jig multiple different ways. You can fish it with live bait. You can fish it with plastics. You can fish it, put swim bait. I mean, you can do a number of things with one bait. So for a bass guy, I'm going to ask you kind of the same question. I'm going to guess probably it's the same answer.
Yep. Same answer, because it's so versatile. You can do so many different things. I fish them like a crankbait. I fish them like, anything, and I can imitate anything with it.
Yep.
So,
yeah, if as an angler, I think the jig is probably the most versatile, all around best bait a guy can have in the boat if you only had one to use. But
yep.
Definitely on that. So going back to the forward-facing sonar, and Joseph kind of hit on something here that the Muskie guys, the PMTT banned forward-facing sonar. I don't know if you remember reading about this or seeing this last year. Halfway through the season, the rules are written, and these couple of guys, the first tournament they did poorly. I think they placed like 30th something. Everybody's got, I can't say everybody, most of the teams have forward facing sonar on their boats. And then one of the tournaments, they come in and then, they boat a bunch of muskies in a 2-day tournament. And they went right to the two guys and, said, oh, you guys, you're forward facing sonar. We're going to change the rules here in the middle of the game. And we're going to ban it for the rest of the year. Here's the thing. I don't care what type of sonar you have. You still have to make these fish eat. Yep. Period. I mean, I'm using it every day on the ice, and you want to come up and tell me that I'm cheating or I'm at a disadvantage. The last few days out, my clients will tell you differently because we are seeing piles. I'm talking schools of thousands of fish right underneath us, swim in circles. And when those fish don't want to eat, they're not going to eat. I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, we are not God. We can't make these fish eat. We can put you on the fish. We can find the fish, locate them. But at the end of the day, you have to make them eat, and you can't do that. You can try and get them to bite, but you can't make them eat.
Yeah, and as for changing rules midstream, that's wrong. That's wrong in all kinds of
100% agree. 100%. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't follow it too closely. I don't get into the whole politics. I just like to go fishing. But when you're the whole field is pretty much able to follow the same rules. Granted, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But that's not that's not the other guy's fault.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't fault a guy for doing something just out of money. It's no different than the guys running 90 horse tillers versus a guy running a 400 Verado. So it's crazy.
I mean, I used to fish Wednesday night pot tournaments at a 14-foot John boat with 8-horse tiller, and I'd beat the pants off of guys with $80,000 bass boats that were wrapped that fished the FLW tour.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to mention any names, but I would, I absolutely, and I couldn't even go very far. I literally would drop my trolling motor and just start fishing and come in the top 3 to 5 every Wednesday night fishing out of a John boat.
Yeah.
It's all about what's between your ears. It's and you can have all the best electronics in the world if you haven't spent the time to learn how to use them.
Well, and the thing of it is, you fish enough too. Muskies are temperamental. I've gone up to Canada, and you see the fish in the clear water. You can throw 1,000 different baits at them every which way, and they're just not going to eat. You come back 3 hours later, and every fish you see, as soon as a bait hits the water, they just go crazy. I mean, there's feeding windows, and these fish eat when they want to eat, and it's fishing.
You need to come down here to Middle Tennessee and fish for the river muskie. That you're seeing them in this super clear river water, and there's only like 2 feet of water underneath your boat, and you can see a 30 and 40 incher just follow you all the way back to the boat. It's ridiculously that's frustrating, fun. But dude, it's so much fun. You can't believe there's a fish that big that lives in that skinny of water, but they're all up and down the rivers.
Yeah. So I actually talked to Dave today. He's getting ready. I think he's leaving tomorrow to head down to Florida or getting ready for one of the first MLFs. And, Matt had a question here. What's your opinion on the rule change with the Bass Pro Tour? The MLF now 5 bass limit. And, I was talking to Dave about this today, and, I think one of the reasons Dave struggled so much with that format is some of these guys just can't go and catch small fish. I mean, they're just wired to find the big ones, and you can't sit on top of a bunch of small ones and just catch them. Some guys, I can't. I'd much rather go and catch big bluegills and I don't even go and look for the small ones. I couldn't tell you where. I know there's lakes that can do it, but I'm a guy that's got to go chase big trophy fish, and I think that probably plays true to a lot of those guys on the tour. And, what's your thoughts on that?
I love it. I love the fact that they finally went back to it because, I was tired of watching the tiny fish challenge. It's one of those things where you get into tournament angling. You spent 20 to 25 years getting to that point by learning how to find the big ones and how to hit the big ones. And now all of a sudden you've got to go find the dinks in order to win. No, it was entertaining to start with, but no,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for the camera, the way they were doing it, to see guys just pile fish after fish after fish, entertaining. But you know what? You can only watch that for so long, and it's boring to watch the same 12-incher get caught 100 times.
Yep, totally agree.
Let's see, Mike Warner, BFS Baitcasters. What are your thoughts on being able to throw lightweight lures on a baitcaster where you would normally use a spinning setups? Pros and cons.
I do it all the time. I actually have an old video where I show how to cast light lures or weightless lures on baitcasters, and I love to do it because a baitcaster is so much faster and more efficient than a spinning reel. You can get a lot more casts in with a baitcaster, but I can do it with just about any baitcaster. Not tooting my own horn, but over years I've learned how to do it. I don't know what a BFS baitcaster is.
I don't know. Well, here's my thought on that too. Is I'm not a big bait casting guy, but when I do throw it, the reason I throw it is more line management. I mean, I know you're a Seaguar guy. I'm a big Seaguar guy, and I throw a lot of braid, and then fluorocarbon leaders on a lot of stuff. But line management, especially when you're fishing all this high end line, stuff's expensive.
Yep.
And maintaining your line and trying to get as much out of it as possible is easier on the pocketbook for sure. So with the spinning rod, obviously you're getting a lot more line twist. You're probably going to end up changing your line a few more times throughout the year. Whereas a bait caster with that no twist on your line, you are going to have a better line management and preserve your line throughout the season too. So that's one of the pros.
Long before I signed with Seaguar, I was fishing their 20-pound, and I wanted to see how long it lasted. It was when I was guiding on the Kingfisher Society, and it's a jig lake, and there's 4 or 5 pounders everywhere because it's a very heavily managed lake. And I caught over 1,000 5-pounders in 1 year on Seaguar 20-pound, but I kept that 20-pound on that baitcaster for 3.5 years before it got cloudy, and I was like, I better change it, stuff like that. Just want to see how long it would last on the baitcaster. But 3.5 years is that Seaguar 20-pound. It was Invisex was what I was using at the time.
Okay.
But yeah, and even Brian at Seaguar said, well, it probably would have lasted another year or two. I'm like, yeah, but it got that cloudy look, that old line look. But yeah, I've been a fan of Seaguar since, I first started using it. I know when I started using it because I caught a big fish on it. Was 06 is when I started using Invisex, and I caught a 9.98 out of the milfoil on 8-pound test Invisex on a spinning rod. And he ripped it through the milfoil and everything else, and Ryan was able to net him. It was in a tournament, and I've been hooked ever since. So
nice. So let's talk Seaguar here for a minute. What lines? I mean, what's your setups?
I'm using a Brazex most of the time for fluorocarbon, and then Smackdown braid. Just because I loaned some Smackdown braid to a guy that I was fishing a tournament with this last week, and he had never used Seaguar braid. And he came back and he said, I have never been able to cast it that far. It was quiet. It came through the grass quiet. It was, manageable and everything else. I was like, yeah, I said, there's just something about it that, and it blew him away. He probably will go home and buy another couple, 2, 3, 4 spools for himself. But I love a Brazex. I do use Tatsu quite a bit. But if I had to choose which one I use the most, it's definitely a Brazex for braid.
Okay.
For carbon.
So why a Brazex versus like a Red Label or a Blue Label?
I use Red Label. I would use Red Label and the new what do they call the 101?
The Tactics.
Yeah, the Tactics. The Tactics braid and the Basics fluorocarbon. The Basics fluorocarbon is $10 a spool. That's one thing, and
And it fishes good. I mean, it really is good line.
It's great line for $10. It is. But if you're going from Tatsu to that, you're not going to like it. I promise. Because Tatsu is like it's the good stuff.
Yep.
But if you're one of those guys that like a bluegill guy who's used monofilament your entire life and you've never wanted to try fluorocarbon because of the cost, this is your chance to go and try it and see how much better it is and how many more bites you get because of it. But I use Red Label for leaders all the time. When I'm flipping and I know I'm going to be flipping heavy cover, I'm going to use 20-pound Red Label. And that kind of stuff, especially with client stuff where they mess things up all the time. When I was guiding, I would use Red Label, just because it got really expensive if you didn't. But yeah, I love it, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, they've a lot of people don't realize that most of these line companies out there, they're not making their own line.
They buy the resin on the open market. Yep. And so even if they're making their own line, they're buying the resin on the open market. Well, Seaguar makes their own resin.
Right. And they do all their own extrusion as well, which is an all-in-one company. Their parent company makes fluorocarbon resins, and then they have all their line extrusion machines that they are able to design and make the lines, in-house from their own resins to control the quality. Where a lot of these other companies are buying whatever they can possibly get and then extruding line. And, that's why when you go look at my favorite setup, pretty much everything I use is a smackdown braid to a gold label leader. And, when you start looking at what the strength of a gold label leader line is versus the diameter, you're dropping down, 3-4 pound diameter, let's say like an 8-pound gold label leader is probably the same diameter as somebody's 6-pound mono. I mean, it's super thin, but yet maintains the strength of that 8, 10, 12-pound test. So obviously the trick with fishing line is the thinnest line you can get away with for your application to give your bait the best presentation without spooking fish.
Yeah, that if you look, the new Tatsu 22-pound test that they just came out with this last year is the same diameter as their 20-pound Tatsu.
Nice.
And I was actually flipping instead of using braid because I didn't want to. I was flipping into really thick cover, but it was super clear, and my best bite was in the middle of the day. I was flipping 22-pound fluorocarbon into some nasty stuff down here in Florida, catching fish during that tournament, and wasn't really worried about it. I mean, I was boat flipping them, throwing them in the bottom of the kayak and grabbing them, and I mean, it's just. But I love that 22-pound because it is the same diameter as their 20 for some reason. And what was it? One of the guys at Seaguar was like, "You're the only person that would have noticed that."
Well, I mean, because I fish a lot of like 2 and 3 pound tests, right? So I'm constantly looking at diameter more so, how strong can 2 and 3 pound tests be, right? I mean, you don't think about that as far as strength goes. You're looking at that more on the lines of what the diameter is.
What they can see.
So whether they can see it, and fishing those finesse bluegills in this super clear water that we have. I mean, when we were fishing Geneva down there, you seen how clear that water is down there. If you have, any heavy line, especially when we're fishing these like 3 millimeter tungsten jigs, going from a 3 to a 4 pound it's like night and day difference. I mean, the jigs are not going to fish as natural as what you can with a lighter line.
What connecting knot do you use for your leader?
So you got me started with the FG knot, and if I have time, before all my tournaments, I will tie up all my tournament rods FG. But every day in the boat, just every single time I got to retie, I'm doing the double uni.
Yeah, I can't tie 2 and 4 pound. I can't tie an FG knot without breaking it. So I have to use either the double uni or the what's the other one I use? I can't remember what the name of it. The Alberto knot.
Yeah, the Albright knot.
The Albright knot. Yeah.
Yeah, the Albright.
But yeah, I can break 2. Every time I try to tie an FG knot with 2 pound,
That's pretty hard to do.
Yep. Yep. So I'll learn. I'll figure something out. I'm going to sit down and practice. And that's one thing about anything. When you're learning how to tie fishing knots, sit down on the couch, grab your line, and practice, because then you don't even have to think about it when you get out on the water, when it counts.
So I tie up a lot of these fly rigs, and it's a lot like a sabiki rig down south.
Mm-hmm.
And for the love of God, I mean, I've taught myself how to do it. Now it's just a matter of, I literally lay in bed with a spool of line next to me and my pool noodle, and I will go through and tie up sabiki rigs while I'm watching TV and wrap them. It's like secondhand nature. And then to try and teach that to somebody is next to impossible.
Right.
I mean, it comes down to, like you say, practice, practice, practice. There's some knots that, I still struggle with, but for the most part, I tie a lot of polymers. The one that I tie a lot of braid, even some of my heavier leader stuff too. Shaw taught me at ICAST one year. I don't even know what the knot's called. But it's kind of like a reverse fisherman's knot, but it's double looped through the eyelet. And when you pull it down, you got 3 tag ends that you got to cut off. And that thing is strong as nails. I've never had a knot break with that whatsoever.
Yep. Yeah, I just have a hard time with 3 tag ends. I'm like, what? Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense, but it for some reason that's my favorite knot to tie. If I'm really gonna get critical, that's what I'm tying.
Yep.
So that Michael Warner says, I just got a Shimano Curado, the BFS bait finesse system.
Oh yeah.
I just got one using 6-pound Seagar and Vizex, using it for Ned rigs and weightless worms.
Cool. I don't know enough about bait cast design to know what makes it a finesse bait caster or not, but biggest thing for me is set it right. And then what I've found is, typically before you cast, you have 12 to 15 inches of line out before you make a cast. And when I'm throwing light lures, I found that it's easier to load up the rod if you put about twice that out and make a long sweeping cast. Then you can load your rod up and it'll cast a whole lot better no matter what. Yep. But I used to have the old Daiwa Pixie years ago. That old Pixie, that was an excellent reel for casting light stuff. And it's just because it had higher grade components. Back in the day, they had the best bearings and everything else, and that really made a difference. So maybe that's what Shimano did with that one, is just upgraded a little bit of stuff.
Sure. Patrick's got a good question here, and he asks, what do you guys think of putting a swivel in between the line just only river fishing? Patrick, my favorite thing for river fishing is, especially when we're walleye fishing, the thing with rivers is there's current. And when you're fishing a heavier line, you're going to get drag. For us, when we're walleye fishing, we try and do a vertical jig, or when we're slipping the current, we're trying to keep our baits perfectly, vertical, right below us. So I'm trying to find the lightest, thinnest line I can possibly get. And I run the Seagar Smackdown 10-pound, and then I use an 8-pound gold label leader tied, double uni knot. The problem I see with a swivel in between there is, number one, it's going to create drag. Typically, as you're fishing a river, there's all kinds of debris, leaves, grass, anything's floating down. That swivel's more apt to catch, that kind of crap and get hung up on your line than if you just got straight line. But then also you're creating an imbalance point. That swivel is going to weigh heavier than what your line is. So now you're going to have kind of a hinge point in there. And that's one thing you don't want to do. You want to have your line be as taut as possible, going from your main line down to your leader. Gene?
I'm not a river fisherman, but that totally makes sense. The only time I use a swivel is when I'm fishing something that's going to twist my line.
Yeah.
Like a fluke. Because of the way I fish it, I'll throw it out, I'll jerk it up underneath and around stuff. But as soon as I feel like it's out of the strike zone, I'm reeling it back in, and it's twisting my line up because I'm reeling it in so fast. So I want a swivel to prevent that. Other than that, I hardly ever use anything other than when I'm, throwing a fluke or something similar, like a weightless worm or things like that. But, with the way you explained it, makes perfect sense. My question is, how long of a rod are you using if you're vertical fishing in a river.
So, and it comes down to personal preference, but that 6 to 6.5 foot is pretty much key when you're vertical jigging. You want something a little bit shorter because you're managing it. You want it to be as close to the boat as you can. Especially when the boat's kind of shifting around with the current. And try and keep you as close as you can to the boat and keep that line perfectly vertical. Some guys like using longer rods. Problem with what I find with longer rods is when you're going up and down these I don't know what you want to call them, current seams or current breaks.
Yep.
We get these these ups and downs from the washboard effect. With a longer rod, you tend to lose that feel, whereas a shorter rod, a little bit stouter rod, you can maintain that contact and just keep a feel on it a lot better.
Yep, that makes sense.
Let's see. So, Patrick, I hope that answered your question. Let's see. Yeah. Well, cool, Gene. I don't know if we don't have any more questions. I'm sure we lost a few guys to Mr. Ice Cream guy there, but I know the crazy thing is so many people will come back and watch this. That's a nice thing about the format is, people come back and listen to it just like a podcast, and it's good. But yeah, are you coming up north at all this summer?
I don't have any plans to, but those months are wide open right now. So I've only got planned through I guess the end of March is what I've got filled up. So we've got a lot of cool things we've been talking about that I don't know if I'm ready to talk about yet because they're still in the planning phase. We are doing I'm doing something called the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series, or what are we calling it? The Knucklehead Challenge, Chad? Yeah, it's like it's basically what it is. You go to Fishing Chaos, you find it under KBF, and you join KBF and everything else. But the cool thing is it's where you sign up under a YouTuber. There's like 5 YouTubers, and you become part of his team, and you fish these monthly challenges, and they're only like $15 a month to join or to fish these tournaments. So it's low cost of entry, and the winner of each month becomes a member of my fishing team for a championship in November in Alabama. And so it'll be me and 4 other guys against the other YouTubers' teams. And it's just we're going to get together, have a good time, eat a lot of barbecue, have a whole lot of fun, and then fish a little tournament on the side. The money that the entry fees are going to go towards buying prizes because we don't want to do the old tax thing and everything else. So we'll take the entry fees, buy kayaks and things like that to give for prizes for the winners and stuff like that. So we haven't quite figured everything else out, but that starts next month for me and Chad and a couple of the other YouTubers. So it's on Fishing Chaos, and it's just gonna be a fun thing. I mean, we're doing it just to build community, build camaraderie. That's why there's not a whole lot of, hardly any cost of entry, but it's just gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We hope it grows into something really big, but right now we're just doing it to see what happens.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, I know a lot of these guys are running like these. I don't know if you use the Fish Donkey app at all. But a lot of tournaments. That's a cool thing with this virtual stuff now is you can be anywhere and run a tournament.
Yep.
And fish against guys from all over the country. So it makes it a lot of fun. I think we're going to do a walleye tournament and then make you guys fish walleyes down south, and it'll be the only chance I get a chance to beat you.
They stock them in my home lake.
Oh, here they stock up on you.
They stocked 6,500 fingerlings 2 years ago, I think, and they hadn't stocked for like 7 or 8 years. So we're catching 24 to 28 inchers.
Come on.
Right now from the previous stockings, but not very many of them, like 5 or 6 a year, because there's not many of them left. There's no way they don't spawn there because the water gets way too hot, and it's just not a good. But it's deep enough for them to live for years. They just can't spawn and can't be really super successful spawning. But,
sure.
But yeah, dude, it's fun. Whenever I talk to anybody about it that's out there fishing, I said, look, if you catch one, put it on a measuring board, take a picture of it, and send it to me or the ranger so the biologist can know what these fish are doing. But yeah, dude, and they're you can tell they're not super healthy, but they're super long, you know.
Nice.
But yeah, they stock them there, and then we have them up of course, up in the mountains in the colder lakes. There's a lot of them. But
Yeah. Well, try and come up here and fish these smallies up in Green Bay and Sturgeon Bay.
Shoot, yeah. Now I want to come up and fish with you, man. I want to go fish for some giant bluegill. Matter of fact, there's a private lake in Alabama that the owner wants me to come and fish.
Is that Aaron's Lake?
Yeah, Aaron's Lake. Yeah, she wants me to come over there and fish. So, but no, what's the name of that? What's the name of that girl that has the big bluegill?
Sarah Parvin.
Yeah, Sarah.
So when you set that up, you let me know I'm on an airplane down there. I've talked to her.
She's only 2 hours from me, so it's,
come on.
Yeah, and I was on a podcast with her last month, and she started talking about it. I said, "Have you ever heard of the Kingfisher Society?" She was like, "I was like, yeah, I guided there for 6 years." So I told you that was the #1 bluegill lake in the world.
Yep.
You know, we were catching on average 1.5 pounds, and 1 in 20 would be 2+.
Yeah. What's she doing down there?
Like they were trash fish, you know, it just.
So I talked to her because we dug our pond in the backyard, and I know she's racing those copper nose.
Yep.
And you know, once I get ready to stock my pond here, you know, she's giving me some pointers, and you know, they've got it going on down there. I'm super jealous.
Yeah, I can't wait to bang heads with her and try to figure out, you know, what she's done and kind of share what I learned guiding at Kingfisher. You know.
So. Oh, when you set that trip up, you let me know. She knows who I am. And
I'll take a selfie with me at the lake. I said, "What's that, Troy?"
I told her of that lake across the river, and she's all about it.
Oh man! So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun, and literally that's where I film, is right there in Huntsville. A lot of the time, I stay at Chad's RV and I film there almost every chance I get. So,
well, I'm gonna have to send her a message and we'll try and get down there and go fish. I'd stop everything I'd be doing right now.
Oh, I bet you would.
And
she's
down
doing something
there.
Special, that's for sure. That is
those bluegills are unbelievable. My goodness, and a lot of food.
You know, I'm one of the few people that have had the chance to hold a 3-pound bluegill. You know, had the chance to, you know, a 1 3/4 pounder I can barely get my fingers around belly to back. You know, a 2-pounder I can't. I got to palm it. And a 3-pounder, it's like holding a pie.
Right.
It's just, you know, there's nothing cooler than holding a 15-inch, 15.5, 16-inch bluegill. I mean,
oh my God.
The biggest shellcracker I ever caught was 5 pounds.
Yeah. What do you think of those fish, or what are those fish that they're catching down in Havasu? Are those shellcracker?
Yes. Yeah, those are red-eared sunfish, which grow bigger, and they're just, you know, they're different than bluegill. And I caught one on the Savannah River that would have been the Savannah River record had I done my research. Instead, I just cut it up and ate it.
I mean, you're talking 5 pounds.
Yeah.
5-pound bluegills.
Yeah. Thumb them, and I've got pictures of me holding 2 giants up like that, and then and so that it's just those are special. But in the Kingfisher Society, we were growing standard bluegill to 2 pounds.
Right.
You know, we had copper nose mixed in, but you could tell the difference between them. I mean, but the thing is, they did it on accident. They wanted to grow big bass, and they had 50 feeders that fed feeder trained bass every day, twice a day. Well, the bluegills were eating the bass food, and I started cranking out in the middle of the lake as a guide, and I would catch these 1.5 pound, 1 3/4, 2 pound bluegill. I'm like, throw them in the lake. I'm catching bass. You know, I'm fishing for bass. Well, we took a picture of a 2-pounder, put it on this website called bigbluegill.com, and blew up the internet. And the next thing I know, we got fishermen coming and doing stories about this lake and meeting guys from all over the world that were coming to fish for our bluegill. And I was like, well, I guess I got to learn how to catch bluegill.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. And
well, they nicknamed those fish down there the Georgia Giants.
Yeah, but those are hybrids. You know, those are hybrids between a red ear and a bluegill. So My goal is to catch I just like giant standard bluegills or copper-nose, because IGFA does not consider a copper-nose and a standard separate, two different species. They consider them the same species. But about the time they shut down was the time I was getting ready to start catching line records for bluegills. Just go through the different IGFA lines and then they were like, yeah, we're going to go do weddings instead of fishing. And so that went away. but yeah. Oh man. But dude, this has been a lot of fun. It really has.
Thanks for taking the time. We'll go back and read the memes on good old Biden here in the morning.
Oh yeah. Only speech I'm going to see is the rebuttal speech. Cause I know whatever came out of his mouth was not. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could have read one of my kids' comic books and it would have probably been more entertaining.
Yeah, it would have made me frustrated because I live in the real world. It's not even funny. But anyway, we can talk about that later. Yes, sir.
Well, Gene, hopefully we can maybe see you at ICAST. We got some exciting news. I'll send you a text.
Okay.
Our rep company picked up a couple new lines, and it's more in the lines of what you're doing. So pretty excited to hopefully be working with some new companies here in a couple of weeks, and the cat will be out of the cat out of the bag will be.
Yeah,
we'll be announcing it here shortly, and it'll be fun. Cool. Get me more into more of the bass side of things too. So.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Well, good luck down in Florida. Stay warm, and yeah, hopefully we'll get a chance to see you here this summer sometime.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thanks, Troy.
Have a good night, man.
All right, later.
Bye. All right. Well, thanks for Gene for coming down. I know he's down in Florida. It's 9:30, 10. So it's 10:30 down there. So probably past his bedtime. Those guys have been fishing hard all day, and I'm sure he's tired. So we'll let him go. Around here, guys that are still on board here watching, we're going to head out tomorrow and check some more ice conditions out on Poigan, and we'll give you a report. We've got some snow coming in here the latter part of this week. Winnebago's a mess. The cracks, the shorelines, both sides of the lake, the rain, the winds, the warmth, everything's really taken a toll. I've told my clients here that, over the next week or so, as we get closer to Battle on Bagel and such, I don't know what they're going to do. That's going to be something you guys are going to have to watch. I can tell you I have some recommendations if it keeps going the way it's going. We're going to see some rescues. We're going to see some people, probably going in here before, maybe even, by this weekend. Who knows? The ice is in, great shape out in the main body of the lake, but getting there is the issue. The shorelines are complete junk. The landings are going to take a toll with this warmth and all the runoff from the rain. And, Mother Nature has just not been very nice to us this winter at all. Poigan, there's a lot of water on the ice. The snow's pretty much gone, but now we're going to get another, I think we're looking at 7-8 inches here in this part of the world. So if that hits us, the good thing is it'll prolong the ice it'll keep the sun from beating on it. But the bad part with that is that once it gets warm, it's going to get sloppy again, and it's just going to turn it into a mess. And you got to remember, guys, is that the ice is already in really poor shape because of all the rain, the freezing, the thawing, the freezing, the thawing. That ice isn't clear anymore. It's already what I would consider, what ice would probably be in early March, where it gets to that point where it thaws, during the day and then freezes again at night. We're already there. So once this snow goes away and this sun starts beating on it, we get some more rain. It's just a matter of, a week or two, and this ice is going to be junk. So, just be smart. I'll try and keep you posted. Watch. I know there's, Burns has been keeping you guys updated out on Winnebago. He's been out there. I'm just refusing to go out on Winnebago anymore, just with the conditions. I'm not going to chance it. I don't need to be jumping cracks and worrying about, finding a good spot. Seems like every day that a new crack opens, or, cracks are moving around so much, and all it's going to take is, just that one time that somebody's going to get stranded, or somebody's going to try and jump a crack or run into a problem, and, end up putting their machine in, or, just something bad's going to happen. I just got that feeling out there this year. And I don't want to be that guy. So, best way to not be that guy is just to avoid it completely. And, we're fishing some small lakes over in Washera County, and, Marquette and Green Lake, and fishing out on Poigan. And, we're still finding a lot of fish. These weather patterns, we had a rough weekend of catching fish. I mean, we were on them, but they didn't want to bite real well for us. Guys like myself, guys that know really what they're doing, can try and figure out how to scrounge out some fish here and there. But there's just days that no matter what you do, you're just not going to get these fish to eat. And with all the food in the system, and the weather changes, and the high pressures, and everything that's going on, these fish are just in a funk. And we're really looking for, this late ice. I don't think we're going to get a really extended long period of late ice fishing. But I'm looking to get into some perch. I know the perch are doing really well out on Bago. But I like catching them up in the shallows, and hole hopping. We've been doing some bluegill fishing, hole hopping in the shallows, and the perch are going to be next. So we're looking forward to that. And, at that point, I think we're going to be, in the boat here pretty darn soon. It wouldn't surprise me if guys are back up in the Fox here, latter part of next week. It's supposed to be warm. We're going to get current, and the rivers are going to open up, and that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to have to get on my tail here and get the boat rigged up and ready to go, and we'll be starting to run some open water trips probably before. I guess we'll be in the boat well before middle of March this year. So we'll keep you posted, keep you updated on what the ice conditions are. Check back tomorrow on the Facebook page. We'll give you an update on what we're finding out on the lakes. And we'll be, out chasing fish all weekend. Not going to give up the ice fishing quite yet. Randy or Rupert, do you have your boat ready yet? What's funny is I backed it into the boathouse, and I haven't even taken off the cover. I washed it. And I haven't even taken off the cover yet. I've been so focused on ice, and trying to get as much time on the hard water as I possibly can. So that's what I know. I know it's not what everybody wants to hear. Like I say, keep an eye out on what's going to happen with Ballon Bago. My guess is they'll probably still run it unless something majorly changes here over the next 7-8 days, and that'll all be determined, what's going to happen with this warm up and the rain and everything else. So just be safe, be smart. And, like I said, we'll keep you guys posted. Next week, I'm possibly looking at, I don't know if Dave Lefebvre is available, but I'm going to try and get one of the another bass guy on that fishes the MLF. He's headed down to Florida right now for a tournament. And I think maybe they're fishing next week, so it'll probably be the week after. But I got some ideas for some guys, but if you have any suggestions, or you'd like to get somebody that is in the fishing industry on to chat with, let me know. I'm pretty certain I can round up most anybody and get them to talk. And I'm trying to get a hold of Sarah here and see if we can't get her on and let her show you some bluegills that will blow your mind, the Slab Lab. So that's what I got. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay dry, and we'll catch you guys on the water.